In this video, I'm going to talk about how do we use the Casio calculator to use a square and a square root button. So if you're working on Pythagoras Theorem, for example, this is a really good application of using the square and the square root sign on the calculator. So just a reminder, Pythagoras theorem is to do with right angled triangles, and the idea is that the square of this side plus the square of this side equals the square of this side. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a calculation that involves using this calculator here. So I've got here now. I just want to introduce a couple of things on here. When you've cleared the screen, here on this sort of grade button here, you've got the square root sign, and that is the inverse of squaring, and here's the squared button there. Okay, so these are the main two buttons that you're going to use when you're doing or performing a calculation such as Pythagoras. So let's just play around with the squared button first of all. So let's look at 2 squared. Now you should know that 2 squared is 4. So if I go 2 and press that button there and go equals, it comes up with 4. Now let's inverse that. Let's find the square root of 4. Now this will only find the positive square root, but that's okay. That's all we're interested in when we're looking at Pythagoras. So if I'm going to square root, the little sort of tick sign comes up. This is the root sign. Okay, this is also can be called a surd as well, which is really important when we talk about this button here, which says surd to decimal. Okay, so this is our square root. So this is the one that we're going to be looking at. All right, so let's square root the previous answer. And if I go OK, it comes and brings me back to 2. Remember, 2 squared was 4, so root 4 is 2. Okay, let's just clear the screen there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now do an actual example. Okay, so let me just scroll up. Wait a second. All right, so I'm going to do this example in front of us. So we've got this this right angle triangle here. Now we want to find the length of the hypotenuse. Okay, so let's put a question mark there. Now it's really important that we identify what the hypotenuse is. Remember, it's the longest side on a right angle triangle. It sits opposite the right angle, so we're right here. And what I'm going to do is label the triangle. So I'm going to label it with our variables A, B and C. That's what was in the formula. So C is the most important side. So that's the one I label first, and that's the hypotenuse. And then we've got A and B are the 2 shorter sides, and it doesn't matter which one is B and which one is A. C is the vital one. The next step, I'm going to write the formula down. So I've got A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And I'm now going to substitute in what I've called A, so that's 3, and I need to do 3 squared. B, I need to sub in as 4 squared. And C, well, that's what I'm trying to find. Okay, so we should know that 3 squared is 9 and that 4 squared is 16. Okay, but just a reminder, we can do that on the calculator just by using those squared buttons. So if you get a decimal number or something you're not sure of, just go 4 squared and press equals, and that gives you 16. And then 3 squared, and that press equals gives you 9. Okay, and then we say, okay, add those together. So that still gives us C squared. When we add those together, we get 25, and 25 is still C squared. So that, remember, is the area on the edge of this triangle, this side, the hypotenuse, and we don't want that. What we want is the length of C. So it's deleted C squared. So now I need to square root. Now we should know that the square root of 25 is 5, but if we're not sure, particularly if we've got a decimal number there, we can use this button here. We can go the square root of 25 equals, and then it gives us the answer 5. Okay, so now we can say that is 5. Because we have done that square root. And we should write that it's centimetres because that's the unit that we're working in. Okay, and that really just gives you a rundown of how we use the square and the square root button within the Casio calculator. Okay, I'm just going to do a decimal number, so perhaps one that we don't necessarily know the square root of. So let's do, what's the square root of 21? Okay, now let's just think about this for a moment. We know that our square numbers are, or the 2 square numbers in between this are 16 and then 25. So the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 16 is 4. So the square root of 21 must be somewhere in between 4 and 5. So let's just check. There we go. When we press equals, we get 4.58, which is reasonable and it's what we would expect. All right, so you will be using this a lot today when you are performing Pythagoras calculations. Okay, thank you for listening.